The chains were cold against Marcus Cole's wrists. He stood on a metal platform under bright lights, surrounded by aliens of every shape and size. Some had too many eyes, some had no eyes at all. All of them were looking at him like he was meat on display, because that's exactly what he was. The slave auction on Station Omega-7 was famous across the galaxy. If you wanted to buy something illegal, this was the place. Weapons, drugs, and people, everything had a price here. Marcus had learned this the hard way when pirates attacked his cargo ship 3 weeks ago. His crew was dead. His ship was scrap metal. And now he was standing in chains, waiting to be sold to the highest bidder. The auctioneer was a thin creature with gray skin and a voice like broken glass. He walked around Marcus, poking at his arms and chest like a farmer checking livestock. "Humans," the auctioneer announced to the crowd. "A rare find, my friends. This species made first contact only 5 years ago. They come from a small planet called Earth on the edge of nowhere. Weak gravity, short lives. Soft bodies." "This one was a ship commander," the auctioneer continued. "He can read star charts, operate basic spacecraft, and perform manual labor, starting bid at 200 credits. He was going to be sold to some alien who would work him to death in a mine or a factory or worse." A voice from the crowd called out, "Does it speak? I heard humans are too stupid to learn proper language." "How many do you speak, besides the one you're currently butchering?" "The last 3 people who tried are floating in space somewhere." It had burned away everything except the core of who he was. And at his core, Marcus Cole was a man who laughed at danger because the alternative was screaming. "What kind of master are you hoping for, human?" someone shouted from the crowd. It was meant as mockery. Marcus shrugged as best he could in chains. "I don't know. I guess I like strong women. Someone who can bench press a starship, maybe. A warrior queen type. Nice scales, 4 arms, could kill me with her pinky finger. You know the type." Someone was watching from up there. Someone important, judging by the armed guards standing at attention nearby. Then the figure moved forward into the light and the entire crowd went silent. She was 8 feet tall. Her skin was covered in scales that shimmered between deep purple and black. She had 4 arms, each one thick with muscle and decorated with golden rings. Her face was almost human in shape, but her eyes were solid gold, and when she smiled, Marcus counted at least 3 rows of very sharp teeth. She wore armor that looked like it had been forged from the bones of her enemies. A crown of dark metal sat on her head, woven between horns that curved back like a demon from old Earth stories. She was, without question, the most terrifying thing Marcus had ever seen, and she was looking directly at him. The crowd parted as she descended from the balcony. People didn't just move out of her way, they fled. Even the guards took several steps back. Marcus heard whispers spreading through the room like wildfire. "The Queen!" And their queen was now standing directly in front of him. She was so close that Marcus could feel the heat radiating from her body. She smelled like smoke and metal and something wild. Her golden eyes studied him with an intensity that made his skin crawl. "You," she said. Her voice was deep and smooth, like thunder rolling over distant mountains. "You are the human who made this crowd laugh." Then she smiled. "You told this crowd you like strong women," she said. She leaned down, bringing her face inches from his. Her breath was hot against his skin. "You said you wanted a warrior queen, someone who could kill you with her smallest finger. I have crushed armies beneath my feet. I have torn warships apart with my bare hands. There is no living creature in this galaxy who does not fear my name. How much for this human? You belong to me now." This was either going to be the worst decision of his life or the greatest adventure he'd ever had. Probably both. Marcus expected to be thrown into a cell. He expected chains, darkness, and pain. He had heard what powerful aliens did with their slaves, and none of the stories were pleasant. Instead, he was taken to a room that was nicer than any place he had ever lived on Earth. The quarters aboard the Wrath Eternal, Queen Virathos' flagship, were massive. The bed was large enough for 5 humans. The walls were decorated with weapons and trophies from 100 conquered worlds. There was a window that showed the stars streaming past as the ship traveled through space, and there were no chains anywhere. A servant, a small, nervous creature with 6 legs, brought him food and clean clothes. The food was strange but delicious. The clothes were made of some soft material that felt like silk against his skin. Marcus sat on the edge of the enormous bed and tried to understand what was happening. He was a slave. He had been bought at an auction. So why was he being treated like a guest? The door opened and Queen Virathos entered. She had removed her crown and most of her armor. Without them, she looked slightly less terrifying, but only slightly. She still towered over him. Her 4 arms still looked strong enough to tear him in half. Her golden eyes still watched him like a predator studying prey. "You're confused," she said. It wasn't a question. "A little bit," Marcus admitted. "I was expecting something different. Chains, torture, being fed to something with too many teeth. My understanding of the universe is a bit shaky right now. I interested you. I have conquered 100 worlds. I have seen millions of creatures face death. They all react the same way, with fear, with begging, with desperate attempts to flee or fight. But you laughed, you mocked your captors, you showed no fear at all. My people respect only one thing: strength. We are born warriors. We fight from the moment we can walk until the moment we die. Weakness is death among the Thyrakeen. It is how we have built the greatest empire in this part of the galaxy. They look at your soft skin and your small body and they see nothing of value. They think I bought you as a pet, a joke." This close, Marcus had to crane his neck to look at her face. "Tell me about your species," she said. "Tell me about humans." He told her about persistence hunting, how early humans would chase prey for hours and hours until the animal simply collapsed from exhaustion. He told her about human explorers who crossed frozen wastelands and burning deserts. He told her about soldiers who kept fighting with bullets in their bodies, about survivors who rebuilt their lives after losing everything. Virathos listened to it all with growing fascination. "You are not stronger than other species," she said one evening. "You are not faster, you are not smarter, your bodies are fragile and your lives are short, and yet your kind has spread across 100 worlds in just 5 years. How? We're too stubborn to know when we're beaten. We lose and we get back up. We fail and we try again. We break and we just keep going." Something that looked almost like respect. Their conversations continued, and slowly, something else began to change too. Virathos started to laugh at his jokes, something her servants told him she had never done before. She began asking his opinions about decisions facing her empire. She started spending more time with him than with her generals and advisors. And Marcus found himself looking forward to her visits more than he wanted to admit. One night, he was walking through the corridors of the ship when he heard voices ahead. 2 of the Queen's guards were talking in low tones, unaware that he was listening. "The human must die," one said. "He is making the Queen weak. She laughs now. She asks his advice. It is shameful. During the power transfer, the Queen will be vulnerable. We strike then." Something he couldn't explain. He started running. He found the Queen in the engine room, overseeing a routine power transfer. She was surrounded by guards, but Marcus knew now that some of those guards were traitors. There was no time to explain, no time to warn her properly. When the assassin's blade came out of nowhere, aimed at the Queen's exposed back, Marcus did the only thing he could think of. He threw himself between them. The plasma blade punched through his chest. Pain exploded through his entire body. He heard Virathos roar with fury. He heard fighting, screaming, the sounds of bodies hitting the floor. Then everything went dark. Marcus woke up 3 days later. He was in a medical bay, covered in bandages and connected to machines he didn't recognize. Everything hurt. But he was alive, and Queen Virathos was sitting beside his bed, watching him with an expression he had never seen on her face before. "You should be dead," she said quietly. "That blade went through your heart. Any Thyrakeen would have died instantly. You could have let them kill me and taken your freedom. And because I really wasn't kidding about liking strong women." And everywhere he looked, warriors walked with weapons on their backs and murder in their eyes. The Thyrakeen Empire had ruled this part of the galaxy for 1,000 years. They had built their civilization on one simple principle: the strong survive and the weak die. And Marcus Cole, a soft-skinned human from a tiny planet called Earth, had somehow become the center of attention. News of what happened on the Wrath Eternal had spread fast. The Queen's guards had tried to kill her, and a human had taken a blade through the heart to save her life. Even more shocking, the human had survived. The story was impossible to believe, but there were witnesses, dozens of them. The Empire was in chaos. Half the population saw Marcus as a curiosity, a strange little creature who had gotten lucky. The other half saw him as something else entirely. They had seen the recordings. They had watched a human take a killing blow and refuse to die. Some were frightened, some were fascinated, and some were very, very angry. "The Queen has gone soft," growled General Korath, a massive Thyrakeen warrior with scars covering half his face. He stood before the royal council, his voice echoing through the great hall. She keeps this human at her side like a pet. She listens to his advice. She shows him favor. This is weakness, and weakness will destroy our empire. I have killed more enemies than you have seen battles, General. I have held this throne for 200 years against all challengers. Choose your next words very carefully. If this human is to remain at your side, if he is to be anything more than a servant, he must prove himself. Any who wish to stand at the Queen's side must face the trial. They must fight the Empire's greatest champions and survive. It has been our law for 1,000 years. If he is truly worthy, the trial should be simple. If he is not, well, then we will know the truth. Marcus, no. Do you even understand what you're agreeing to? Survive them all and you may remain at the Queen's side. Fail even once and you die. They'll keep pushing and pushing until you have to choose between me and your empire. I won't put you in that position. His forearms were like tree trunks and his scales were scarred from 100 battles. Marcus faced him in the great arena, surrounded by thousands of watching eyes. He had no armor, just simple fighting clothes. He had no weapons but his hands and feet. Thrakos attacked like a storm. Marcus didn't try to block. He couldn't. A single blow from those arms would shatter every bone in his body. Instead, he dodged, he ducked. He rolled and jumped and moved like water flowing around a rock. Thrakos grew frustrated. His attacks became wild, angry. Marcus kept moving, kept dodging, kept refusing to stand still long enough to be hit. The fight lasted an hour. Finally, Thrakos threw a massive punch aimed at Marcus's head. Marcus dropped flat to the ground and Thrakos' fist slammed into a stone pillar behind him. The pillar cracked. Thrakos roared with pain, his hand broken. "Yield," Marcus gasped from the ground. "Please yield, I don't want to hurt you." "I yield," Thrakos said. The crowd fell silent. Then slowly a murmur began to spread. The second day brought a faster opponent. The third day brought 2 fighters at once. The fourth day, Marcus faced a warrior with poison blades. He lost every match by points. He was beaten, cut, bruised, and bloodied. By the 5th day, he could barely stand, but he refused to stay down. Every time he fell, he got back up. Every time the crowd thought he was finished, he rose again. The Thyrakeen had never seen anything like it. They beat him over and he simply would not die. On the 6th day, his opponent broke 3 of his ribs with a single punch. Marcus fell to his knees, coughing blood. The crowd roared, expecting it to finally be over. Marcus looked up at the stands. He found Virathos watching him, her face tight with fear and something else, something that might have been hope. He put one foot on the ground, then the other. He stood up. "Is that all you've got?" he asked. His opponent stared at him with something that looked almost like fear. "What are you?" the warrior whispered. "I'm human," Marcus said. "And we don't know how to quit. I will not hold back." "Yield, human. You have fought well, but this is finished." "How are you still standing?" Thousands of Thyrakeen warriors were on their feet, cheering for a human, cheering for the impossible. Marcus looked toward the royal box where Virathos sat. She was standing, her 4 hands gripping the railing, tears running down her face. He had done it. Then his legs finally gave out and the world went black. Marcus woke up in the royal medical chambers, his body wrapped in so many bandages that he looked like something from an ancient Earth horror movie. 3 Thyrakeen doctors stood around his bed, studying data screens and talking in hushed voices. "Impossible," one of them was saying. "His bones are already beginning to heal. At this rate, he'll be walking within a week." She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her golden eyes were red and her scales had lost some of their shine. "You idiot," she said. "You complete fool, you almost died. There is no one left who questions your place at my side. General Korath himself has declared you worthy. I thought you were dead. After it is complete, you will be my official consort, my partner in all things, my equal. You taught me that." Servants who should have been in the palace at certain times were elsewhere. Supply ships were arriving at strange hours, and their cargo manifests didn't match what was actually being unloaded. Marcus had spent years as a cargo ship captain. He knew how to read patterns in shipping and logistics, and the patterns he was seeing now didn't make sense, unless someone was planning something. He started asking questions, casual questions the kind a curious human might ask. He chatted with servants about their schedules. He made friends with guards by sharing stories about Earth. He wandered the palace, playing the role of a harmless foreigner who didn't understand Thyrakeen customs. Nobody suspected him. Why would they? He was just a human, clever perhaps, but no real threat. That was their mistake. Within 3 days, Marcus had pieced together the truth. General Korath had yielded in the arena, but his hatred hadn't disappeared. He had simply gone underground. He was working with a faction of nobles who saw Virathos's interest in Marcus as weakness. Worse, they had allied with the Dominion of Sithar, a rival empire that had been waiting for a chance to strike at the Thyrakine for centuries. The plan was simple and brutal. During the bonding ceremony, when the queen would be focused on the ritual and surrounded by crowds, assassins would strike. Korath's forces would blame the attack on humans, claiming that Marcus had been a spy all along. The Sithar fleet waiting just outside the system would arrive to assist the Thyrakine in their time of crisis, and never leave. It was a coup disguised as a tragedy. Marcus brought his findings to Virathos that night. He laid out everything, the changed guard schedules, the secret meetings, the hidden communications with the Sithar. He showed her the patterns that only someone looking at the full picture could see. Virathos listened in silence. When he finished, her face was like stone. "You're certain?" she asked. "I'm certain. It happens at the ceremony 10 days from now." Your people respect strength. They expect threats to come from the front, from enemies who announce themselves and fight openly. They're not used to looking for enemies who smile and bow and plan in secret. It's how we survived before we had technology. We couldn't outfight the predators, so we had to outsmart them. Korath's coup might have succeeded, and you would have been far away from any danger. You sat beside my bed when I was dying and held my hand. You keep surprising me. He would gather evidence, record confessions, and prepare a broadcast that would expose the entire conspiracy to the galaxy. The Sithar couldn't pretend to be saviors if everyone knew they were invaders. Virathos would handle the military side. Her loyal forces would position themselves to intercept the assassins and neutralize Korath's soldiers before they could act. "This is dangerous," Virathos said as the sun began to rise. "If anything goes wrong, if they discover our plan, I should never have bought you at that auction, because I have never met anyone stronger than you. You will need your strength." It was the most sacred night in the Thyrakine calendar, the only night when a queen could formally choose her consort. Millions had gathered in the great plaza before the royal palace. Billions more watched from across the empire through broadcasts. And somewhere beyond the edge of the system, hidden behind a cloud of asteroids, 300 Sithar warships waited for their signal. Marcus stood in a small room near the ceremony platform, adjusting the ceremonial robes that Virathos's servants had dressed him in. They were heavy, made of some metallic fabric that shimmered like her scales. He looked ridiculous. He felt ridiculous, but he was also ready. "The guards at the eastern entrance have been replaced," said a voice from the shadows. A Thyrakine soldier stepped forward, one of Virathos's trusted loyalists. "Korath's men are in position throughout the crowd. We've identified at least 40 assassins." The evidence package is complete, Korath's own voice discussing the coup with the Sithar ambassador. Once it goes live, there will be no denying it. "We could arrest them now, before anyone gets hurt. There's no coming back from that. Tonight, under the light of our 3 moons, I choose my consort. I choose the one who will stand beside me for all the years to come. I choose the one who has proven his strength, his courage, and his heart." Marcus walked out onto the platform, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. He crossed to Virathos and stood before her, a small figure next to her towering form. "Do you accept this bond?" Virathos asked, her voice carrying the weight of ancient tradition. "I accept," Marcus said, "now and forever." They burst from the crowd like shadows, dozens of them, all wielding plasma blades that glowed in the moonlight. At the same moment, Marcus saw Korath's soldiers moving to block the exits, trapping the civilians inside the plaza. But they weren't the only ones moving. Virathos's loyalists sprang into action before the assassins could reach the platform. Battles erupted throughout the crowd as hidden warriors revealed themselves and engaged the enemy. Screams and the clash of weapons filled the air. Virathos herself was a terror to behold. She drew 4 swords from her armor and launched herself into the nearest group of assassins, cutting through them like a hurricane through leaves. Her golden scales flashed in the moonlight as she fought, beautiful and deadly in equal measure. Marcus didn't try to fight. He had a different job. He sprinted toward a small building at the edge of the plaza where his equipment was hidden. 2 assassins tried to stop him. He ducked under the first one's swing, kicked the second one in the knee, and kept running. He wasn't a warrior, but he was fast and he was very good at not dying. He reached the building and slammed the door behind him. Inside, a broadcast console waited, already prepared. Marcus hit the transmit button. Across the Empire, every screen flickered. Every communication channel was suddenly broadcasting the same thing. General Korath's voice, clear as crystal, discussing his plan to murder the Queen and blame it on humans. His negotiations with the Sithar. His contempt for Virathos and his hunger for power. The effect was immediate. Throughout the plaza, Korath's soldiers stopped fighting. They looked at each other with confusion and dawning horror. Some dropped their weapons, others tried to run. And at the edge of the system, the Sithar fleet, caught in the middle of their approach, suddenly found themselves exposed. They weren't saviors coming to help. They were invaders, and now the entire galaxy knew it. The fleet retreated. Marcus ran back to the plaza to find the battle mostly over. Korath's conspiracy had collapsed the moment the broadcast went live. Most of his soldiers had surrendered. The assassins were dead or captured, but Korath himself was still fighting. He stood at the center of the platform, surrounded by bodies, facing Virathos alone. His scales were covered in blood, some his own, some from others. His eyes burned with desperate fury. "This isn't over," he roared. "I challenge you, Virathos, single combat for the throne. By ancient law you cannot refuse." Korath was wounded, but so was Virathos. She had been fighting for several minutes against multiple enemies. A single combat now would be dangerous. And if Korath won, if he killed her, the law would force the Empire to accept him as ruler. But there was another option. Marcus grabbed a small device from his pocket, something he had put together from spare parts during his recovery. It was crude, ugly, and definitely not traditional. He threw it at Korath's feet. The stun grenade exploded with a flash of blinding light and a sound like a thunderclap. Korath stumbled backward, his hands flying up to cover his eyes. Virathos didn't hesitate. She crossed the distance between them in a heartbeat and drove her blade through his chest. Korath looked down at the sword with disbelief. Then he looked at Marcus, standing at the edge of the platform with the empty grenade launcher in his hand. That wasn't honorable," Korath gasped. "No," Marcus agreed. "It was human." It started small, a few voices here and there, but it grew and grew until the entire crowd was roaring with triumph. Virathos stood in the center of the platform, covered in blood and moonlight, more magnificent than Marcus had ever seen her. She looked at him, and despite everything, the battle, the danger, the near-death experience, she smiled. "You cheated," she said. "I improvised. You turned my enemies against each other with nothing but information and timing. So does this mean I'm officially your consort now?" Millions of Thyrakine warriors were watching him, watching a human who had stood beside their queen through fire and battle and conspiracy. He raised his hand in a wave. "So," he said loudly enough for the nearby cameras to pick up, "I told someone once that I like strong women." Even some of the captured traitors smiled. Virathos put her arm around him, one of 4 arms, but still. "Come, my consort, we have an empire to rebuild, and I believe I promised you something." Behind them, the 3 moons of Thyrak Prime shone down on a new era. An era of alliance between humans and Thyrakine. An era born from courage, stubbornness, and a joke made in chains at a slave auction. Across the galaxy, the news spread. A human stood beside the warrior queen. A human who refused to die, refused to give up, refused to accept that strength came only in one form. The galaxy had dismissed humanity as weak, fragile, and unremarkable. They would never make that mistake again. And Marcus Cole, former cargo ship captain, walked into the palace with a queen on his arm and a smile on his face. He had asked for a strong woman. He had gotten the love of his life, not bad for a human.